Cars on the Road is a show that I expected to pass me by without any issues at all. Upon its initial announcement, I was admittedly somewhat skeptical when I saw a concept art of McQueen and Mater speeding away from a dinosaur. I was afraid we'd have ourselves another Cars 2 situation where they colossally jump the shark, a fear that was in no way dissuaded by the official poster that released in August. But potentially ridiculous plot elements aside, as far as the integrity of the characters was concerned, I was overall relatively optimistic heading into this one. I figured at worst it would be inoffensively boring, and at best it would be a fun adventure with the iconic duo of Lightning McQueen and Tow Mater crossing the country. Seems pretty hard to screw up a premise as promising as that one, so did they screw it up? Well, based on the fact that you're currently watching an hour-long video about cars on the road, you can probably make a solid inference about how I feel in regards to that question, but I'm also willing to bet that a majority of you haven't actually seen this show before because outside of being a Disney Plus exclusive, I have yet to see more than 1 or 2 people discussing Cars on the Road online. Not to say that there aren't more people out there talking about it, but I don't ordinarily have to search online for very long before I see a flood of tweets or YouTube videos, all about the brand new Pixar thing. So rather than prematurely spoil the things about this show that, annoyed me, to put it lightly, I'll take you on a complete, comprehensive journey through the world of Cars on the Road, from start to finish, episode by episode, doing my best to verbally and accurately emulate the experience I had watching it for the first time. And if you don't want that, then by all means, go check out the steaming pile of All in All for yourself, then come back and watch this video. I'll be here for you when you get back. So what's this show all about? Well, Mater has a sister.
Wait a minute. You have a sister?
And he's heading out east across the country to attend her wedding. But they drop some breadcrumbs for later about how the two of them don't get along too well, and there's something else mysterious about his sister that makes a reunion between the two of them an oddly daunting prospect for him. So McQueen offers to tag alongside Mater on this journey, and that offer quickly turns from taking Mac to get there quickly to actually driving across the country with Mater. Naturally, this excites him greatly, so Ramon offers to give McQueen a custom paint job for the trip, because toys, and thus a new spin-off series is born.
McQueen and Mater are hitting the road.
That all seems fine enough as a premise, but at this point in my initial viewing of the series, only 2.5 minutes into the first episode, I already had a very pressing question on my mind that had yet to be answered by the announcements, the Disney Plus description, or any other plot synopsis I read before the show had actually released. And it's a very simple one. When does this show take place? The initial assumption I made was that it would slot alongside the movies chronologically, meaning that the events are occurring after Cars 3's ending. That seems like a logical conclusion to arrive at. Then I saw these opening 2.5 minutes, and I began to question that conclusion. For one thing, McQueen's paint job from the end of Cars 3 is now gone. Which would be one thing if it had simply been a cosmetic change he made because he felt like mixing things up, but that wasn't quite what this was. It was a change he made to completely solidify his decision to step into Doc's tires as Cruz's mentor. It's symbolic, you might say. Perhaps a bit too on the nose.
Wow. Subtle.
But nonetheless, an important aesthetic decision he made that you wouldn't think he would so flippantly reverse. And furthermore, it seems like McQueen is actually out here training, as that was always what Willie's Butte had been used for in the Cars movies prior to this point. Which seems like a rather strange thing for him to be doing since he's no longer an actual racer, but is instead the crew chief for Cruz, Ramirez. Of course, that's not as solid of a piece of chronological evidence to present, as it's possible that he could just be going for a joyride around the bend. But putting those two things together seems to imply that this series actually takes place before Cars 3. And if I may jump ahead just a bit, Mater's main conflict in episode 3 is all about how he really wants to go super fast, just like his best friend Lightning McQueen, something he's never been able to achieve prior to this point.
I've always wanted to go faster and faster. Why can't I be the fastest?
Which obviously would be a really stupid conflict for him to undergo if this is taking place after Cars 3, because by this point, Mater would have already done this.
Oh my gosh!
Among plenty of other high-stakes, heart-pounding situations he found himself in during Cars 2, where he had the opportunity to go faster than fast. So all signs seem to be clearly pointing towards Cars on the Road taking place before Cars 2 and 3, which is Fine. I take no issue with that inherently. They can set the show at any point they like in the timeline of this series, as long as no seriously problematic contradictions arise in doing so. It would be really awkward if anything like that ever popped up along the way, especially if it wound up standing in direct opposition to the entire point of one or two or even all three of the previous Cars movies. I was really hoping that wouldn't happen, so instead, throughout their road trip, I simply put this question of chronology out of sight and out of mind, assumed the show was set before Cars 2 and 3, and tried to enjoy the wacky shenanigans McQueen and Mater got up to in their own right. On that note, let's take a look at how those shenanigans played out. So first up on our itinerary is the Cretaceous Gardens, a dino-themed tourist attraction that proves to be far more exciting than the likes of the tire mazes and wingnuts they visited previously. It also winds up being a complete and utter waste of my time. Once they leave Radiator Springs, all that happens in the real world outside of dropping more breadcrumbs to the finale about Mater's sister is the two of them looking at different dino exhibits, including a guided tour, after which they leave. Oh, and there's also a joke about how McQueen is an expert in paleontology and Mater is very dumb and bored by the museum tour. Brilliant. The rest of the episode is dedicated to a daydreaming sequence where Mater imagines that he and McQueen are dinosaur cars back in the prehistoric era. It's a fast-paced, intense, and hectic action sequence, but I'm struggling to find a single reason to care when they make it pretty abundantly clear from the outset that all of this is just a daydream.
I'm saying this scenario is scientifically impossible.
And as soon as said dream is over, they just start driving towards the next episode. So in summary, episode 1 consists of 3 minutes of setup, 2 minutes of nothing, and then 2 minutes of a different kind of nothing.
Oh, but wasn't it so cool to watch them almost get eaten by the dinosaurs?
No, actually, it wasn't. I guess the film grain overlay and the deliberately lowered frame rates on the dinosaurs are nice little visual touches to make it feel like they're actually inside the educational movie that Mater was watching in the museum, but I felt absolutely no emotion watching this at all because I knew it wasn't actually happening to them. The strongest thing I felt was a desire to just go watch Jurassic Park instead. I was waiting for the conflict of the episode to actually begin, but I quickly realized, oh, there isn't any. It's just Mater's dream. Great. Thanks for wasting my time, show.
Oh, take it, buddy!
Get it? It's funny because he yelled as if his dream was actually happening. Oh, but don't you understand? It was all worth it because Mater actually learned something about dinosaurs at the end of the day, despite not wanting to stop at such a boring educational tourist attraction. See, kids, education is valuable. Even if a museum seems boring at first, you really should pay attention. You might come away with a fresh perspective on things or a new bit of knowledge, and knowledge is power. This was definitely a message we thoroughly explored in this episode rather than padding the runtime with wacky dinosaur shenanigans. Oh well, guess it's time to get back on the road. Oh, actually, one last thing I want to point out. Episode 1 officially tells us that in this universe, the Cretaceous period was a time where dinosaur cars roamed the earth as proven by the archaeological findings of car dino DNA, which is a perfectly fine premise to accept by itself, but as far as connecting the movies together in one giant timeline to tell one huge story is concerned, good luck, Pixar theorists! Okay, so episode 1 was worthless, but hey, maybe episode 2 will give us something more interesting. Mater and McQueen are caught in a vicious thunderstorm and need a place to stay for the night, and so they come across the Destiny Hotel, the sign for which gets struck by lightning for extra dramatic effect to make sure you know you will die if you stay here. A hotel, by the way, whose general design is somewhat reminiscent of the Haunted Mansion out in Disney World, at least from a distance, which is actually kind of a nice touch, I must admit. Once they make their way past the cartoon of a front desk worker and get to their room, Mater falls asleep almost instantly, whereas McQueen is a little scaredy car because of ominous trees outside and creepy noises coming from the floor above, so he... Okay, so now's a great time to get the hell out of this hotel and never come back. Or you could drive directly toward the mysterious, creepy voice calling your name. Yeah, I guess that's also a choice you can make if you're feeling less keen on self-preservation. What? There's ghosts in the Cars universe now? Really? That's the direction you wanted to take this show? Ghost cars? Oh good, and they're like Boos from Mario, I guess. Take one look at them and they just magically disappear. Then they take a page out of The Shining, and then they take another one.
Come race with us, Lightning.
Huh?
What was that? Am I supposed to take this seriously? Do you want me to think he's in danger here or not? McQueen clearly thinks he's in danger, but if I was in this situation, I don't know that I'd be having any reaction that isn't just to die of laughter. And what is McQueen doing right now? Why are you bothering trying to do a 3-point turnaround in this obviously tight hallway when you can just reverse out of the way? Did you forget how to drive backwards? Oh, wait a minute. Was it for the funny haha? Did you do it for the funny joke? Yes. I love placing my characters in what they believe to be, and what they clearly want you to believe are dangerous situations, then playing it up for laughs. That always goes so well. And what a horrendous design for a hotel, by the way. How could cars ever navigate these hallways on a regular basis? The rooms are large enough to allow cars to maneuver properly, but some of the hallways are only wide enough for one car at a time? Okay then. Whoa, wait, what's going on now? Did someone spike your oil between episodes? What am I supposed to think is happening? Spoiler alert, the rest of this episode is complete and utter batshit insanity from start to finish, and it only gets worse as upon trying to activate the elevator it instead does a troll face and unleashes a tidal wave of antifreeze liquid and then...
Hello?
You're late.
Try the punch.
It's to die for.
Must not laugh at the stupid. Next up, McQueen finds a death car at the end of the hallway. Who somehow literally pulls the rug out from beneath him and races alongside him in the hallway despite having just got done establishing how narrow they are and— Where are we now? How did we get here? What is this episode? Am I on acid? Do the writers expect me to be following this logically as if there's any semblance of cause and effect that led McQueen to be flying through the void? Like, what? Oh, okay, so it was all another dream then.
I guess old buildings like this can really play tricks with your mind.
Wow, so in that case, I must ask the question of why did you waste my time again?
Have you been messing with the guests again, Randy?
Wait, so it wasn't a dream sequence? Wait, so you mean to tell me that not only did all that insane garbage actually somehow happen at the hands of the hotel employees' manipulation, but the ghosts in the paintings were actually real the whole time? So there are now canonically ghosts in the Cars universe, and they can apparently interact with living beings on top of all the other hallucinogenic antics that Lightning got up to all night. What do you— I think I would actually prefer it if it were just another dream sequence. Or as shocking as it is for me to say that, it may end up being a waste of time in that case, but at least you wouldn't be obliterating my perception of reality in the process. You know something? Cars has almost always been a relatively realistic series. Not realistic in terms of cars being alive, obviously. Realistic in that it felt like we were watching a very human story with realistic stakes and situations, even in this cartoonish world with talking cars. Now, Cars 2 certainly stretched the limits of that. A lot. What is happening? But Cars 1 and 3 told very grounded stories and made it really easy to get emotionally invested and immersed. But now we've got reality warping teleportation doors and antifreeze elevators and ghost ballrooms and a bunch of other wacky stuff I have no idea how to even remotely begin trying to explain. I have no idea how the hotel staff managed to pull all these stunts. It couldn't have been drugs because the ghosts still come out of the paintings even after it's all over, long after Lightning leaves, meaning this is actually happening whether he can see it or not. And McQueen wouldn't have even had time to ingest anything anyway. I was joking earlier when I asked if someone spiked his oil. He wouldn't have had a chance to drink or eat anything. There is genuinely no way to rationalize how this all could have happened. Some of it can be explained with holograms and clever lighting trickery. I did say it looked like Haunted Mansion after all, so who knows, maybe there was some Pepper's Ghost involved here. But this shit? I don't have the faintest idea what they want me to think happened here. By this point, I was totally lost to what was even happening anymore, despite the fact that we were only a whopping 2 whole episodes in. But I was also chomping at the bit to watch the rest of the series, because if we were getting this off the rails in episode 2, then I could only imagine what exciting calamity awaited me throughout the rest of the season. Isn't your mind just brimming with the possibilities? Well, I guess it's time to find out what else is in store for our heroes. On to episode 3. Oh great, we're on Crate, my favorite.
Salt.
How the hell did they get this far off the road? No, seriously, how? You are in the middle of absolute nowhere right now. How could you have possibly gotten this far off track without noticing where you were going? The highway wouldn't have naturally led you here. This is a place you would have had to consciously choose to travel to. How did you get so hopelessly lost? Well, however they got here, McQueen looks at a vast, empty salt desert and sees the perfect opportunity to put the pedal to the metal in a race. The result of which is that McQueen is obviously going to win, but slows himself down so Mater can pull ahead at the last second, and then he says,
But it sure would be fun to be fast.
Again, I'm sure this show must take place before Cars 2 and 3, so obviously Mater wouldn't know anything about going fast at this point in his life. Surely nothing would ever contradict that. Oh my goodness gracious, how are you two still alive? You were right next to each other in one shot, but then they cut, and one shot later, you're exactly far enough away from each other for this thing to be able to blast between you? You know, I feel like blitzing by at those speeds should still affect you to some degree, but I guess not. Apparently, there's a whole outpost of land speed racers out here that get specially outfitted to become precision instruments of speed and aerodynamics. And hey, Mater was just talking about how he wanted to go fast. Perfect timing! So despite McQueen's concerns, the Guido ripoffs get Mater all set up as a racing machine and he takes off at the speed of sound. Usually I say that as an exaggeration, but I'm actually not kidding this time. He literally breaks the sound barrier, blasting across this desert after topping out at
640 miles per hour!
Which is very, very bad, because Mater's plot armor is falling apart at the seams and he's rapidly losing control. So, if he were to completely lose his grip on the ground and go crashing into the desert flying at
640 miles per hour!
he would be dead! Yep, that's what happens, alright. And so Mater died a very quick but unfortunate death in the desert of salt, and he never made it to his sister's wedding. Wait, what the hell?
Well, that's it then.
Refuse to follow the rules of gravity.
What am I watching?
Freaking winged car here,
I
guys.
can't believe they killed
Wait,
me.
what's going on right now?
What's going on is what people like to call
Is
purgatory.
that car Jesus?
Seriously? This is episode 3! How are you throwing this level of stupidity at me in episode 3? So Mater enters a state of existence between life and death, where the speed demon, haha, funny joke, tells him he died and then brings him the rest of the way to his ultimate destination. Kinda like the conveyor belt to the great beyond from Saul. Although, I say that, but it actually doesn't look anything like what happens in Saul at all. So, once again, good luck, Pixar theorists! But let's assume this is how death works in the Cars universe. When you die, you meet the speed demon, and then they take you to your final destination. Seems fine enough as a world rule, so long as this actually sticks as a consequence.
What's done is done.
So long as crashing into the desert when traveling at a speed fast enough to shatter the sound barrier and being taken away by the speed demon actually results in your death and there's no way for you to cheat your way out of— Wait, what's going on now? How does that—
I'm swimming.
What the fuck is going on?
What is happening? Literally, he's ramming into a freeze frame of himself with a car with wings.
What the heck?
How did you do that? How is that— Wait, I guess it's consistent with the last episode in that now ghosts can interact with living entities, except Mater shouldn't be a living entity anymore. Isn't that the whole reason you were pulled out of your body? Because you died, and the speed demon was taking you to whatever the Cars universe's equivalent of the Great Beyond is? Why did you suck the soul out of his body before he actually died? And I'm not even going to bother trying to figure out the logistics of opening your own car door and flying back inside. Thinking about the anatomy of a car is not something that I ever want to do at any point in my life. Just from a perspective of basic logic, how does this make any sense? He can just come back to life because he decides he wants to? Or is it because—
Suppose I can let one slip through the cracks.
In which case, why? Why are you even allowed to make that choice? Even if you allow his soul to return to his body, it shouldn't matter anyway. He's still dead! He was going 640 miles per hour and he broke the sound barrier. Which, by the way, that still shouldn't be fast enough to actually create a sonic boom, but I digress. His will to live shouldn't be powerful enough to defy the laws of physics. That's complete nonsense. As soon as your tow cable dug into the desert, it would have been ripped right out of your trunk. You would not have began to slowly decelerate. Oh, but it's all okay because funny jokes, am I right? Piss off. After Mater summons the power of Cars 2 to help him survive, they head back to the outpost to discover that everyone wants him to race for their team, but he says screw them all, and so our intrepid heroes make a great escape and get back on the road, headed for episode 4, in which we discover that they decided to take a bit of a pit stop and go camping. And while McQueen wasn't looking, Mater decided to go make some new friends.
But Mater, I thought this was our time. We were gonna hang out together.
Well, it seems to me you're fighting that road trip spontaneity. That make it up as you go spirit.
Man, that's a really weird thing for Mater to say, considering how intensely committed he was in Cars 2 to spending time only with Lightning. Whether this show takes place before or after that film, it's still extremely awkward to hear him say that, because it's either that he was content spending time with other people even if it was at the cost of alone time with McQueen, and then did a hard 180 to the point where he pretended to be a waiter just to spend time with McQueen while he was on his date with Sally, or that he went from that hardcore focused state of affairs and then magically threw threw the value of his friendship with McQueen out the window entirely in favor of going camping with some schmucks he found out in the wilderness. Lovely. But who are these schmucks, you may ask? Well, turns out they're crazy monster hunters out here chasing down Bigfoot. Oh, you think I'm lying, don't you? No, I'm telling you the truth here. We are about to watch McQueen and Mater go on a monster hunting trip because they happen to bump into the only nutjobs in the woods crazy enough to do something like that. And during this search, Mater completely leaves McQueen in the dust, which would be bad enough by itself because Mater never would have left his best friend's side, especially if he actually thought there was a chance of running into a dangerous monster out in the woods. But it's even worse because McQueen getting left behind leads to him getting spotted, chased, and then captured by Bigfoot. And at no point during any of this chaos do any of the monster hunters, including Mater, think to turn around and check out what's going on. Nobody else is out here right now. There's no conflicting audio to pull your attention away, and McQueen is screaming out loud while he and this massive machine are grinding through the forest. What are you clowns doing? Oh no, McQueen has been captured by the Bigfoot, and now he's hung up inside her cabin of doom, I guess. Wait, what is that noise?
What the heck?
What are we doing?
Dude, okay,
We're dancing with
am
Bigfoot,
I going
obviously.
insane, or am I watching a Bigfoot car dance to a rave?
And so it is revealed that the Bigfoot they were searching for wasn't actually a monster, it was just a monster truck the whole time. Or, sorry, she
Used to be a monster truck.
because I guess that term is more so in reference to an occupation rather than her actual construction as a specialized off-road vehicle. See, when she was a young monster truck, she used to participate in a show where she murdered other cars. Nope, that's not a joke, that's just what she did. Wasn't aware that homicide was such a popular sport in this universe, but alrighty then. See, she got sick of killing cars, and so she ran off into the woods because
Out here, I don't need to be anything for anybody.
And so because of that, she decided to start acting like Bigfoot, thus feeding into the monster hunter's paranormal desires and pretending to be something for somebody. Makes sense? Actually, why is she even mistaken as a monster in the first place? She's literally just a monster truck, a type of vehicle. Those aren't some rare phenomenon. They exist in the Cars universe. It's not like she's actually some horrific car monster who looks scary on the outside but is really a sweetheart on the inside. She's just a standard monster truck. Why do these idiots think she's Bigfoot entirely because of that?
I keep scaring them off, but they just keep coming back.
Oh, okay, I suppose that does make sense. Wait, why? Why would you do that? The whole reason you're being harassed by them is because they think you're actually Bigfoot. Scaring them away only bolsters that belief, which is what's landed you in this situation where they keep hunting you down in the woods. You're just making things worse for yourself. Aha! Mater has come to the rescue. Oh no, he's tied up too. How did you lose a battle against the monster truck? Her goal is not to kill him, it's to restrain him. And she apparently managed to do that without damaging him at all, or even knocking him unconscious, so raw strength can't be a factor in play here. But you know what Mater has to his advantage? A tow cable that can be used as a weapon against other cars to pull them to the ground, and many other creative combat abilities. He also may or may not have some degree of martial arts experience, depending on when the show takes place. So how did he lose this battle when she doesn't have a weapon to use but Mater does? Well, regardless, the deal that this monster truck called Ivy cuts them is that she'll let them go so long as they help her flush the nutjobs out of the forest to reclaim her home with an immensely overcomplicated Monsters University style plan. Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you just, leave? If they're really bothering you so much, then why don't you just go away? Leave this part of the woods. Go literally anywhere else? Do anything other than wasting time setting up a Hollywood horror show just for these people? Oh wait, is it because she has some sort of sentimental attachment to this cabin and doesn't want to leave and therefore needs to reclaim her home? Well, that would probably make sense. Perhaps you're right. I guess we'll see. And what follows this conversation is a series of complete and utter baloney. Who would have guessed it? For our opening act, they somehow manipulated the moon to make it look like a UFO is landing on the planet. Maybe Mater contacted his little alien friend from one of his tall tales. Who knows? Then, the hunters stumble into a tripwire that was rigged to a sheet that somehow covers all three of these cars and completely shuts out their vision of the world. I don't know how that's possible when that thing looks like the dinkiest of blankets and the RV is way taller than the other two cars, which would heavily affect its ability to cover all of them. And then in a matter of what seems like seconds, they all get strung up and taken back to the cabin? How do you keep doing this? How did you even know they would specifically come to this exact location and cross this exact line from this specific direction? The blanket doesn't restrict their movement, it just confuses them temporarily. Any physical effort you engage in to try to bring them here is something they would feel and try to resist. And as for actually suspending them, again, how? It's the same problem I have with Cars 2. Given their limited dexterity, how are cars capable of building things like this and tying knots and hanging other cars up like this? And do you know how strong that rope would have to be to suspend an RV in midair? Oh, I don't have the slightest clue how any of this works. Who cares? They tricked the hunters into thinking that Ivy's an alien and Mater was captured and killed. So they all flee in terror and thus our heroes emerge victorious. I guess. This show is such an absurd mess of insanity. The episodes range from being about literally nothing to featuring blatantly ridiculous events that I cannot possibly buy into. So McQueen and Mater are ready to leave Ivy behind forever and get back on the road, and then...
Hey! Where are you guys headed?
Oh, come on, really? You were willing to leave the entire time? Then why didn't you? Why didn't you sneak away when you had the perfect chance to? The hunters weren't hot on your trail. You had a very significant buffer zone between you and them. Why wouldn't you run away if you were open to doing so the whole time?
Well, here's to spontaneity. What doesn't kill you at least makes a new friend.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that the point of the episode? That it's okay to be spontaneous and carefree sometimes? Because that spontaneity almost got you killed! And specifically in this episode, it involved venturing into the spooky forest alone at night. Not exactly in my top 10 list of great ideas to send to an audience of young, impressionable kids watching your show, but yeah, what do I know? Maybe you will encounter a friendly monster if you go into the woods at night. Nothing bad will come of that, I'm sure of it. Is that what you're trying to do here, by the way? To justify all the calamity on the screen with some kind of connective, meaningful message every episode? So what was the message of episode 2? Don't do drugs? Don't ride the Haunted Mansion? You can't just show me a bunch of stupid crap like this and then pathetically attempt to tie it together with the thinnest thematic relevance ever. Cut it out. I better not see any more of this in upcoming episodes. Speaking of which, episode 5! Ivy and Mater enter a car wash and she comes out looking brand new, whereas he emerges looking exactly the same. Because Mater's such a dirty, icky boy. Please laugh. While out on the road, they stumble across a circus, which terrifies McQueen because, as it turns out, he's afraid of clowns. Gee, I sure hope they treat this phobia seriously and not as a joke.
Afraid of a few clowns. Jiminy Christmas.
Mater, you rust bucket of misery. You are afraid of anything and everything under the goddamn sun, whether it's real or not. You are in no position to be making fun of his phobias, and even if you were, why would you? Is this not your best friend, Lightning McQueen, whom you don't like seeing unhappy? You can clearly tell that he is severely affected by being around clowns, and your response is, "Dadgum, why in tarnation would you ever be afraid of a few stupid clowns? Yeehaw!"
Mater enjoys life. He's a good friend. And what makes Mater happy is making other people happy. Afraid of a few clowns. Jiminy Christmas.
I love how the show portrays these two characters so much. If Mater was even a halfway decent friend, he would have turned right around and left with McQueen without so much as a second thought. Not actively gone further into the circus, stayed to watch the show, and laughed about his phobia. I now present to you the Clown Show. Not because it features clowns, but because the events that are about to take place are so outlandish and impossible to take seriously that I can only assume it was a bunch of clown writers that put it together.
Oh no!
And then you see...
Okay, no, hold on a second. Cars are lifted by ropes and they can bounce on trampolines without going straight through it.
Yes,
what is happening?
some pretty damn strong trampolines.
Or pretty light
And
cars.
that, and,
What is this show?
Oh, nice knowing you guys.
Can
Wow!
jump.
Wow!
What? Okay.
What?
No, I don't care this is a circus. That doesn't make them immune to following basic physics. Trampolines strong enough to support cars, parachutes supporting cars. It just, look, I don't want to hear about how, well, hold on now, Cars 2 is really stupid too. Because yes, Cars 2 is very stupid, and it also contains many senselessly idiotic sequences like this one. And I take just as much issue with that. The difference here is that the rest of the world also takes issue with Cars 2. But people are apparently loving this show if Rotten Tomatoes is to be believed. So here I am now, making a video about how none of this makes any sense at all because the record demands being set straight. And you know what the cherry on top of it all is? When the clowns ask for an audience participant, Mater volunteers to
Pick him!
Wait, what?
Who are you? Not only are you belittling his phobia, but you're actively trying to make it even worse for him by volunteering him to go up on the stage? What happened to the inseparable duo of McQueen and Mater who would do anything for each other? I don't care that he doesn't actually get picked. The fact that Mater even tried to make this happen at all is completely against his character. Oh, but it wouldn't be a Cars on the Road episode if it didn't close out with some more stupidity! Ivy is selected as the audience participant, and then she suggests her own routine she can perform in the show. And that routine is murdering other cars.
He's at it again! I thought she was done with all that.
Then why don't you get off your chassis and do something to stop her? If you believe she's about to crush those cars to death, then go down there and try to save them. Maybe this could even be what gets Lightning to overcome his fear. The desire to save the innocent clowns down there is what forces him to leap into action. Would it be somewhat expedited storytelling? Yes, absolutely, but so is the rest of the show. It'll fit right in alongside every other speedrun theme and character growth you've attempted to spell out for me. Nope, instead they're just gonna sit there and let her...
What's happening?
What did you make her sign up for?
Oh.
This was on the contract.
You've never done this before.
I thought this series was gonna be a whole lot of nothing.
What an asinine clown show this was. How did you pull this off flawlessly without even so much as a practice run? We know she didn't do a practice run because if she did, then McQueen and Mater wouldn't have been surprised by what she was going to do. And by the way, it doesn't really matter that she ultimately ends up not killing the cars because they thought she was going to and yet still chose to do nothing to try to stop her.
I don't know, it just came out of me.
What? What do you mean it just came out of you? That expert level parkour doesn't just come out of you when you're a monster truck with no prior experience in this field. And do I even need to explain how inane it is that Guido Jr. here is able to support the weight of a monster truck? What a horrifically stupid episode, but I can't even laugh at this one like the last few because this time around, you've dealt serious damage to both McQueen and Mater's characters despite this only lasting for like 7 minutes.
Apparently we just got the easy stuff in episode 1 and 2.
Episode 1 and 2 is okay. Episode 3 and beyond is freaking blown up my brain.
You have no idea what's waiting you in episode 6.
It gets worse! It gets worse! How does it get worse?
You don't know. You have no idea.
Stupid.
Oh, it's going to get so much worse. Let's find out just how much worse, shall we? The clowns ask Ivy to stay with the circus, and so she does, and McQueen and Mater say their goodbyes and drive off to episode 6. It's real cute that they think Ivy had enough development for this to actually be an emotional scene, but whatever. Next episode. What do you have in store for me this time?
Trucks are the best. Sometimes I wish I was a real truck just like them.
A real truck? What do you mean a real truck? You are a tow truck. It's in the name. What are you talking about? Oh, I know what he's talking about. We need a conflict for this episode, and so the writers have decided that conflict shall be Mater wants to be a truck. You know, I feel like we could have resolved this by simply holding up a mirror to him, but oh well. You guys don't want to try again with this one? Don't want to brainstorm for another day to see if you can come up with literally anything else that isn't this ludicrously half-baked? Ah, don't you see? Mater honked to the truck and he didn't honk back. How sad. Therefore, he doesn't feel like he's a real truck. It couldn't be that the other truck just didn't hear you, or interpreted your honk as the horn is meant to be used, that being in a negative connotation if another driver is doing something stupid. But still, we have a conundrum on our hands. However, are we going to make Mater feel like a real truck? Oh well, let's find out, shall we? McQueen makes a pit stop inside this roadside convenience store while Mater waits outside. I don't exactly know why he had to wait outside. It's a public store. Why exactly couldn't Mater come inside this place? That doesn't really seem to make
What?
a whole lot of sense.
Trucks.
Alright then.
The heck? Are we gonna have a sing-along?
Well,
Welcome to the truck
welcome
cult.
to the truck cult.
What the fuck?
This is a fucking old song,
What
basically.
is
I thought episode 5 was insane.
Life is just a stroke of luck.
Cause there ain't nothing like being a truck.
Trevor, you've watched all of this, right?
Uh-huh.
You willingly sat through this a second time?
I have to make a video about it, damn it! Look at this! Oh my god. Oh no.
What the heck? I like the back.
It's a truck man. Truck, just a truck man.
Hey, do you guys remember a little musical number known as A Place Called Slaughter Race? Yeah, well, this is just that, but on steroids. Somehow. Look, obviously this fifth-dimensional psychedelic imagery isn't actually happening to the characters. Or at least I hope they don't want you to think this is all actually happening. I'm not going to criticize them for simply having a batshit crazy musical number. The issue here is a matter of tonal consistency with the rest of the Cars series. You can't take a series that has always remained super down to earth with its stakes, except for you, and then blow everything this wildly out of proportion completely randomly. Jarring doesn't even begin to describe it. Like, how did we go from this?
Long ago, but not so very long ago, come what may, it's our town.
To this.
It's a trap, shaking and turning, the rubbers are burning, the belts will be turning, the engines are purring.
Cars had lyrical music they played to enhance the scenes. Real Gone, Life is a Highway, and Our Town are all incredibly iconic songs that effectively accentuated the events that take place in each of the scenes. It's not a matter of simply having a song that's the problem here, it's the fact that we've had such a drastic shift from songs that feel appropriate for the world of Cars to something that feels like it was ripped from a crap version of Phineas and Ferb. Like, really, am I still watching a Cars show? What are we doing right now?
Mater, what kind of oil did you ingest? Was it all in all? Yes, all in all. That stuff kills you.
Filmer told you he couldn't trust all in all. Oh
Yeah,
my
exactly. Like you said, what? Okay, I was joking about them being high.
Sure, that's
I said they were high. I was joking. Now what? Okay, I'm not even gonna question my screen anymore. My screen.
They will just refuse to acknowledge it exists.
Yeah, what's even happening?
Mater took the truck drug.
Were there no writers for this show? Or like for this episode?
Was that the entire episode?
Yep, it sure was! Yeah, nope, this musical number is the whole episode. Was there a mandate for making 9 episodes and this was just the best you could come up with for one of them and you didn't care? It's so wildly out of place compared to the rest of the show, which is saying a lot considering what we've had to deal with up until this point. And even if we ignore the insanity that we had to watch visually, it just doesn't track logically in terms of what little amount of story this episode had. Mater is the big sad because he doesn't think he's a real truck when he categorically, demonstrably is and has acknowledged himself as such previously. And so all the trucks decided to cheer him up with a musical number? Why? Did they sense his sadness psionically, or is this some kind of cult thing that they try to indoctrinate him into? Like, what was the point of all this? Well, at least the good news is that episode 7 is a lot calmer than this. Unfortunately, it's also a lot more boring than this. There's no over-the-top action we can laugh at, it's just a whole lot of nothing, because this show only has 2 modes, and a possible secret third mode we'll find out about later. But for now, it's either nothing or insanity with no in between, and this time the wheel landed on nothing. The story is that McQueen and Mater have strolled up on a movie set. How are they allowed to just carelessly roll onto this set? Are there no security cars keeping the place locked down for the production? Does nobody care? I guess not. Anyway, they're filming a zombie apocalypse movie, and Lightning McQueen gets hired as a cameo role, which makes sense. Yeah, if such a famous celebrity accidentally wandered onto your movie set, you'd probably want to find a way to convince him to get a cameo role.
Me? In a movie?
And it's nice to see him so genuinely excited to be in a movie since it's a nice little callback to his cinematic fantasies from the first film. Alright, cool, you've got 2 whole points so far. That's gotta be a new record.
She insists on using only practical effects instead of all that fakey CGI stuff.
The irony of listening to a show distributed by Disney preaching about practical effects versus CGI. Anyway, it's time for another hilarious joke. That being that McQueen sucks at acting. Something they stretch out for a full minute of screen time, which may not sound like that much until you realize that this episode is only 9 minutes long, and that's including the opening logos, intro theme song, and closing credits. We just have to sit and watch McQueen awkwardly fail to say a single line over and over again, and then get vomited on for way too goddamn long. You don't have time for aimless filler. But what's Mater's role in the episode? Does he have something more interesting to do?
So, you gonna give a speech or a toast or something at your sister's wedding?
You know, I ain't much for getting up in front of folks.
Oh really? You didn't agree to be McQueen's lawyer in front of the whole courtroom in the first movie? And depending on when the show may or may not take place, you didn't voluntarily and confidently grab the microphone at the party in Cars 2? You didn't confront the lemon cars in the climax? You are clearly a very extroverted, outgoing, outspoken character who shouldn't have any problems whatsoever delivering a speech at a wedding. But they've apparently ignored all that for this episode episode, and that's his arc. He needs to learn how to deliver a speech, and because they quickly discover that while McQueen may suck at acting, Mater is actually very enthusiastic, so they keep giving him bigger and bigger parts, culminating in acting as the president and getting to write his own speech. Did you not have any other actors on set for any of these roles? Did they just wander onto the set as you were writing the script and you just keep using them to fill in all the gaps in the casting so you don't have to actually pay real actors? Oh, sorry, actually, they did cast one actor, and it's
like all that's in it were completely Latinized.
Really? You cast Dave Fennoy to be the starring role in a zombie-themed movie? Okay then. Also, McQueen feels insecure because Mater keeps getting big roles and everyone loves him for his acting more than McQueen, so he says,
Gotta be honest, I always thought I'd be the one who'd be good at this.
And then the next morning he says,
I've been a jerk. I'll try to be a better friend today, alright?
No, you haven't? You said one mildly inconsiderate thing last night, and the rest of the time you were here, you were joking around with him like it was any other day. I know you only have 9 minutes to work with, but maybe if you hadn't wasted one of those minutes on a blooper reel, we could have tried to develop this conflict some more. Anyway, they tell Mater that he's gonna need to write his own speech, and then they come back the very next day to film the scene, and...
Whoa! What is that?
You... What? What happened here?
This show is taking a new direction. Total rewrite.
New direction? What are you talking about? Wait, what?
Mater? Lightning!
Ivy, what are you doing here?
Whoa, slow down. What is going on right now? They gutted the entire production and changed the whole show's premise, including writing and choreographing a brand new musical number all in one night? Are you kidding me? Who wrote that? How did that happen? Did you not just tell him literally last night that...
We'd like you to write your own speech.
How could this have happened so quickly? And what the hell is Ivy doing here? She says...
But what are the chances I get discovered on stage and cast in a real movie?
But how could that possibly have been the case? How was somebody in this production crew at the circus ready to cast her in a movie when A, 2 episodes ago nobody even knew this circus existed because it's in literal nowhere land, and B, this version of the movie didn't even exist until this morning? And how did she get here so fast? Unless this was already planned far in advance, but if it was planned far in advance, then why did you bother filming any of this stuff yesterday and telling Mater to write his own speech last night? And when did you find the time to rehearse this musical number if you wrote it overnight? Was anybody thinking at all when they wrote these episodes?
So what, no more zombie horror?
Heard that movie was a train wreck.
What? What are you talking about?
Literally yesterday, they were as pleased as could be with Mater's performance. Does anybody know what's happening anymore? Who wrote this? Yes, directed by Brian Free, written by Steve Purcell. Let me see what Steve Purcell has done with his life. Oh, he wrote Brave.
Oh.
Hey, so accounting for Brave 2, let's go.
Oh, and he wrote Toy Story That Time Forgot.
Of course.
Speaking of best piece of media. Time Forgot.
And the next episode is both written and directed by that person. Can't wait to see what that means for my sanity.
Well, you make chewy smacky sounds in your sleep and your brain.
Well, your breath smells like a carpet fire.
Great, our main characters are bickering over trivial garbage. Sure would be awkward if there was another movie in this series where we already went over this little arc. Doubly awkward if at any point that movie is confirmed to take place before this one. Hope that never happens. Anyway, they get kidnapped by a bunch of road rumblers and are forced to compete in the Thunder Cone where
2 cars enter, 1 survives.
And even as they are driving around deadly obstacles such as flamethrowers, spikes, and saw blades, they're still yelling at each other and arguing like school children.
Fine.
Who are you people? Oh, but don't worry, because none of that actually matters literally at all. It was complete filler. All the Mad Max cars disappeared from the scene and have gone to watch the cloud of doom apparate over the horizon. Turns out the real conflict of the episode is that the road rumblers have to go to war with another group of cars we know nothing about with whom they once lived in peace until something happened and then they started fighting. No, I'm not omitting information when I say that something happened. Just listen to this.
You don't even remember what you're fighting about?
Not really, no.
Is this a joke? Is this some kind of twisted prank show? Oh, but don't you see? The episode opened with McQueen and Mater bickering about nothing, and it's the same as these two factions going to war over something they can't even remember. It all ties into the theme of the episode. Yeah, that's cute. Unfortunately, it's also worthless because you spent absolutely no time developing this. It's a ham-fisted conflict and one you have to beat me over the head with explicitly. Not to mention that we already did this song and dance in Cars 2, and it makes no sense that these two massive armies would even hear them intervening. And even if they did hear them, there's no reason they'd stop the charge to listen when they literally just arrived in town a matter of a few hours ago at most and have no authority over these people whatsoever. Yeah, duh, of course that's what would happen. There's no reason they would ever listen to you. And then our heroes drive headfirst into the battle to try to cut through them and escape to the highway on the other side? What are you doing, you absolute rusted air filters? Drive around them! Why would you drive directly through the deadly horde to try to escape the deadly horde? And seriously, what are we even doing right now? Thunder cones of death and massive all-out car wars? Do you guys remember when Cars was about racing? Do you also remember when Cars 2 raised the stakes through the roof with an international adventure and tons of explosions and crazy action and everyone rightfully hated it? Well, all of a sudden, all that stuff is actually very cool and awesome! Good thing we're mere minutes away from the finale because there's only so much more of this I can take. McQueen and Mater somehow managed to escape unscathed and relax at a gas station where it is revealed that the warring factions apparently actually made peace with each other? How? Why? What changed between these two shots that take place within the same minute of screen time? What is this show? I don't understand anything that's happening. But regardless, at long last we have, thankfully, finally made it to the grand conclusion of the season. It's almost over. The final episode where McQueen and Mater show up to his sister's wedding. The last 8 episodes have been comically idiotic garbage, ranging from vapid nonsense to boring nothingness. But surely they'll be able to stick the landing, right? Surely they'll be able to keep the story super grounded for a wedding ceremony, and we'll get to learn a bit more about Mater's backstory and flesh out the characters some more, right?
After humble begin.
Okay then. I guess country bumpkin Toe Mater secretly grew up in an extremely wealthy family and kept that hidden from everyone. Bit of a bizarre choice, but hey, they certainly managed to successfully subvert my expectations.
This is not what I expected.
But no strict contradictions have arisen in the episode so far, so let's just keep on rolling and see what else they have in store for us.
Hey, do you have an invitation?
What?
Mr. McQueen!
Cruz!
You... what?
You don't have to call me Mr. McQueen. We're both racers now.
But if...
Oh, it's my cousin Mateo's wedding. He's getting hitched to some
eccentric socialite. For your information, that eccentric satellite is my sister.
How are you... Why? So, my prediction from the beginning of the show was wrong. Apparently, Cars on the Road takes place after the events of Cars 3, as evidenced by the fact that Cruz Ramirez is here. She has the body pain from after she agreed to race for Dino, and she's already well acquainted with McQueen. Let's ignore, for the moment, the astronomical coincidence that of all people Mater's sister is getting married to, it just so happened to be Cruz's cousin, and somehow this miraculously never came up at all in conversation between the engagement and this point. If this show takes place after Cars 3, then how do you explain all this crap? How do you explain Mater's motivations in episode 3? How do you explain the fact that McQueen has lost his paint job that was specifically donned as a tribute to his mentor Doc Hudson? And I'm sorry, did I hallucinate a second ago, or did McQueen just say,
we're both racers now?
Are you kidding me? Lightning McQueen and Cruz Ramirez are both racers now? Did you people just entirely forget what happened in Cars 3? How McQueen retired from being a racer to take up the mantle as Cruz's crew chief and mentor? Did you forget how that was the entire goddamn point of the story from beginning to end? Apparently you did, so I guess now I need to remind you certified lemons what that movie was all about, and how it was just about the most perfect way you ever could have concluded Lightning McQueen's story. Cars 3 presents Lightning a situation he's never had to grapple with before, being surrounded by a new generation of racers that outclass him in every way. It's hard enough to force himself to try to keep up with the new competition when he has every disadvantage working against him, but it only gets worse as he sees his longtime racing friends hang up their tires one by one. But in doing so, he almost prematurely ends his career anyway by literally pushing himself so hard he almost dies trying to keep up with Jackson Storm. The world keeps telling him to quit, that he's at an overwhelming statistical disadvantage and it's not even worth trying to compete against the youngsters. The news is constantly reinforcing it, and Storm acts as if McQueen is already retired, but he doesn't want to give up the thrill, and he doesn't want his career to be brought to a halt the same way his mentor's was. He's not interested in racing for the rewards or the glory. He's interested in it for the adrenaline of going 200 miles an hour, inches from the other cars. That's the reward, the satisfaction he gets from that rush, and he wants the ability to decide for himself when he backs down from the sport, which is why he goes all over the map, putting himself through the most grueling training methods imaginable just for the chance to knock Storm off his throne. But he ultimately realizes that he just can't do it. No matter how how hard he pushes himself and how crafty he gets with tactics on the track, he's never gonna be fast enough to stand a chance against the newbies, with Cruz passing him at Thomasville bringing back horrific memories from the darkest moment of his career. He travels to Florida and begins the race with a looming sense of dread, having lost any ounce of motivation he once had to keep his career alive. He knows now, in no uncertain terms, that he is going to lose this race and his future is firmly in the hands of Sterling as a brand to be sold.
To the future, hey champ? Yeah, to the future.
Even as everyone around him, from his fans to his friends, try to instill one last burst of confidence, he knows it's all a facade and is struggling to process what his life is going to become without that rush of adrenaline to chase after, until he sees Sterling chastise Cruz for wanting to stay to support him in his final race.
Mr. McQueen still has a chance.
Just go do your job.
Yes, sir.
Take out that spoiler and those racing tires. You look ridiculous. You are a trainer, remember? Not a racer. Not a racer.
Then all the pieces fall into place and he realizes what he has to do. It's McQueen's final time on the racing track. His one last shot to set everything right and set both himself and Cruz down the paths best suited for them. Because he learned through Smokey that Doc's best years, the most rewarding part of his career in the world of racing, was when he was mentoring Lightning and imparting all the lessons he learned as a rookie onto a new racer and helping them achieve their dreams just like he did. A way to stay in the business without being on the track while giving Cruz the big break she wanted after missing her chance at a racing career all those years ago. So he assumes the mantle of being Cruz's crew chief and coaching her through her first big race just like Doc did for him. And in doing so, he found a thrill even greater than that of being on the track. The thrill of watching someone he poured his heart, sweat, and tears into training go on to become a superstar, to grow and develop as their own racer under his wing. Discovering for himself that kid's got a lot of stuff with the same glowing, proud expression that Doc once had when he looked at McQueen. Now, is this a flawless ending?
No.
Logistically, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. For instance, how is McQueen able to call Cruz back to the stadium when a big plot point earlier was that she has to match his speed in order to be able to track his stats because the AI she's using to do that
Hamilton here.
Is an electronic personal assistant on her phone and he doesn't have a car phone?
Race cars don't have phones, Cruz.
And Smokey wouldn't have been the one to do it because the call is clearly sent out using a codename that only Lightning would be aware of and think to use.
Hamilton here. Call from Chester Whipplefilter.
Chester Whipple? Mr. McQueen?
Furthermore, how are they even allowed to sub in a new car so long as the number is on the vehicle?
Rules only say the number has to be out there. Doesn't say who has to wear it.
Why wouldn't every team exploit this by subbing in a new car like a tag team halfway through the race so they don't get winded? Or so that if one car ever gets in a crash, then someone else can still race for the team? This doesn't seem like a rule that would ever be allowed. And how does Lightning even get the credit anyway when Cruz was the one to basically do all the work? She enters the race in last place, so all of his progress is basically nullified anyway, which just makes the fact that he still gets credited for winning the race all the more baffling. So, yes, there are definitely logical problems with how this little switcheroo unfolds, but character-wise, it works perfectly to bring Lightning McQueen's journey full circle, as he is now fully committed to helping another racer find their stride rather than only caring about himself, and is living out the same mentor role as Doc did for him. Adopting Doc's paint job and moniker and giving his number to Cruz might be a little bit on the nose, admittedly, but it still serves as a perfectly satisfying conclusion to his story. And you want to know why else this ending works so well? Because Cruz Ramirez is actually a rookie racer who needed McQueen's guidance just as much as he needed her. She's introduced as an excellent trainer because that's what her job was and she was damn good at it. A charismatic personal trainer for the rookies at the racing center who had learned through experience the best ways to encourage all her racers to gradually improve. But that was all we knew she could do. When McQueen takes her out onto Fireball Beach to start his training, the idea of actually racing on solid ground as opposed to merely using the simulator is completely foreign to her. And he has to teach Cruz all the nuances of racing and the lessons he learned throughout the years just so she can keep up with him long enough to track his speed, in much the same way that Lightning learned the tricks that would've won him his first ever Piston Cup from Mater and Doc. And she isn't immediately a master of these new abilities. When McQueen tries to teach her about turning right to go left, she struggles to get the hang of it at Thunder Hollow and winds up spinning out and getting stuck in the mud, as was the case on Fireball Beach. Even just entering the demolition derby was something she was incredibly apprehensive to do because it was so far out of her comfort zone. She has to work throughout the movie to build up her confidence again after having it shattered at her first ever race, at which point she thought her dreams were unattainable and that she didn't belong on a racetrack. But thanks to Lightning's guidance, she is able to regain that confidence and get a good enough handle on being a racer to participate in the Florida 500, to learn his tricks and techniques. It took the whole movie for her to get onto that track, and it was only through Lightning's fervent insistence and their teamwork. He was on the radio making the calls he knew Cruz needed to hear, just like she did for him.
He looks old and broken down.
Hey!
And with flabby tires.
I do not.
Use that!
Whoa!
You are a racer.
Use that.
She wasn't a one-car show that steamrolled any obstacle that stood in her way with no resistance. It was only after an entire movie's worth of development that she was able to get on this track and win her first ever official race, as now they complete each other. It's not one character who's perfect out of the gate and another who's struggling to keep up. They both fill the voids they were missing in each other's lives. They're a team working together that's gonna take the racing world by storm moving forward, which makes her and McQueen's journeys all the more satisfying. But now, in Cars on the Road, all of that has been completely thrown out the window. To start with Cruz, would you like to hear a comprehensive list of all the things she is now capable of doing?
I started a racing school, formed a nonprofit that provides snow tires to the lightly treaded, and I'm learning French. Oh, I also became a certified referee over the off-season. Did I mention I dabble in family therapy? I'm also a licensed wedding officiant.
Of course you are.
Like, is this a parody? How the hell did you do all that crap during a single off-season? People didn't like you as a character because you were an overpowered one-stop shop with every qualification and ability the plot required. They liked you because they understood the struggles you faced at an early age and how heavily that impacted your confidence throughout your life and how you had to work hard to regain it and the effort you put in to finally live out your dreams. So why then have you turned her into someone who's now the bestest at everything ever? But putting that aside, it's not even the worst part of her characterization here. The main plot of this last episode is that Mater finally reunites with his sister, whose name is...
Motto.
Motto? Yes, like tomato without the tub.
She seems nice.
But upon doing so, the two of them revert back to the way they acted when they were kids, constantly fighting over who's better and engaging in a string of increasingly absurd competitions to decide the victor, which is something we're going to talk about more in a little bit. But the most pressing issue for the moment is that Cruz says,
"Oh, I also became a certified referee over the off-season,"
and then proceeds to cheerfully encourage the two of them to face off in all these competitions at her cousin's wedding. And the result of doing so is that the wedding officiant gets sick of waiting for the bride to stop dicking around and goes home early, which is entirely Cruz's fault for letting all of this happen and in turn jeopardizing her cousin's wedding. So unless she secretly hates her cousin for some reason that is never implied or stated in any way, why are you so enthusiastic about encouraging all these shenanigans? And since you later admit that
I dabble in family therapy,
then why wasn't this your first suggestion upon seeing them get this antagonistic towards each other? Cruz wasn't established as someone who revels in drama. She doesn't like confrontations like this. And especially if she's dabbling in family therapy, because then her priority should have been to defuse the situation, not escalate it. But of course, if we did that, then we wouldn't have enough content for a full episode that's already less than 10 minutes long, and we're fresh out of musical numbers, so we gotta do something. But that's still not even the worst part about this final episode.
We're both racers now. See you on the track, racer.
Oh, you got it, Lightning.
Lightning McQueen is a racer again, and has lost his paint job. I logically assumed that the fact he no longer had his new look was because this took place between the first and second movies. But clearly that isn't the case anymore, so the only conclusion you can reach is that after McQueen definitively realized that he had found a way to stay in the world of racing and find that sense of satisfaction he was terrified of losing without physically being on the track, he's actually decided that none of that matters anymore, and he's back on the track running the races. Why did you do this? Why did you completely undo his character development from Cars 3? How have you so consistently assassinated characters from your classics every time you made any kind of a sequel in these last few years? Wait a minute, are you going based on this line?
Oh, I'm gonna keep racing.
Because you can properly fuck off with that garbage if that is your basis for McQueen suddenly being a racer again. It's definitely a very poorly worded line of dialogue, but you can also clearly see based on the fact that McQueen changes his paint job to mirror Doc Hudson, and the fact that in all the images displayed during the credits he's in the position of crew chief and is not racing alongside Cruz, that what he meant by that was, I'm gonna stay in the racing scene, because the conundrum presented to him was that if he didn't win the Florida race, he would quit the racing business forever and sell out to Mr. Sterling. So when he says,
"Oh, I'm gonna keep racing,"
he means that he's going to remain as Cruz's crew chief and so is still technically involved in racing as opposed to the alternative, which is to sell out. So if you are actually basing this all on that one line, then you're gonna have to try a lot harder than that. You know what this gives me vibes of?
There's this great line where Ralph says, you know, if that little kid likes me, how bad can I be? And that's such a sweet sentiment. But you start to realize that it really means Ralph has more to grow. Defining himself based on whether Vanellope likes him, it doesn't mean he's actually figured out how to like himself.
One day, folks. One day. How does this happen? How is the director of Cars 3 on the writing team for this show, and this is still the result? Did you watch the other movies? Did you watch your own movie? How did you think it was even remotely okay for McQueen to strip away something that was literally done as a dedication for Doc Hudson? The whole point was that he couldn't compete anymore. That even if he miraculously won this singular race through some Nagito levels of luck, it was unsustainable moving forward because all the other cars were categorically faster and better built than he was. And that the most satisfying part of Doc's life wasn't when he was on the track himself, it was helping train a new rookie to compete against the next generation, and that's why he did what he did for Cruz. I know I said the paint job was a bit on the nose, and it is, but it also makes the writer's intentions for his character arc clear as day, even if the dialogue is very weirdly worded. Oh, but it's okay, because they give him a new arc in this show. See, McQueen just wants to fly home to Radiator Springs, but Mater wants to extend their adventures for a bit longer and drive home instead. So then McQueen hears Mater give a speech about how life is short and you gotta make the most of it, and that it's all those wacky adventures that make life worth living. And so he decides to drive home instead. Yeah, that's a much better arc than what we got in Cars 3. I know you only have 10 minutes to work with, but A, you chose to make this a series of shorts rather than a show with standard episode lengths like Monsters at Work. And B, you also chose to dedicate one of those shorts to being nothing but a musical number, and a majority of this episode to a dumbass superiority complex competition that has no relevance to this arc that you try to shove in at the last second. Also, didn't you already learn in the first movie about not always living life in the fast lane and how it's important to slow down and smell the roses to really enjoy life? A development for his character that Cars 3 visually communicated the aftermath of by showing how McQueen has Mac completely ignoring the main highway as a means to get to the training center and instead takes routes that bring them by stunningly beautiful locations even if it takes longer, as a stark contrast to the first movie. And that seems to directly spit in the face of the very premise of Cars on the Road, with McQueen wanting to take the fastest route out of the gate in order to get to the wedding instead of enjoying the scenic route. Did you forget that too? And would you believe me if I told you that even Mater doesn't escape the finale unscathed? Because his whole plotline for the final episode revolves around feeling insecure because his sister's a bit of a—
I can't say.
And he feels the need to prove who's better.
I do believe we know who's better.
Gee, I don't know. Is it the one who sat around on her ass in this mansion for a couple decades, presumably being a terrible person to all her butlers? Or is it the one who, despite not being the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree, still managed to use what few skills and knowledge he did have to, let's see, what was it again? Oh yeah. Save the world on the international adventure of a lifetime alongside professional secret agents at the top of their game, and who was knighted by the fucking Queen of England! Did you people forget that movie too? And you can't argue that the events of this movie were kept top secret due to the nature of the espionage business, thus preventing him from ever sharing these stories with anyone else. All of this happened in broad daylight. Mater was publicly knighted in a grand ceremony. Holly flies into Radiator Springs in front of a bunch of cars who were not present for the final battle, meaning she clearly is not concerned with secrecy. Mater is allowed to use his rocket spy gadgets during the race, once again in broad daylight, and it literally ends with Sir Tow Mater being added to the very publicly visible welcome billboard for Radiator Springs. The town is now known worldwide not only as the home of Lightning McQueen, but as the home of Sir Tow Mater. I know Cars 2 was terrible. It's the laughingstock of Pixar that we don't talk about, and it's a dumb, stupid, schloggy action movie where nothing makes any sense at all, and it made the idiot tow truck the main character, but that doesn't mean you get to erase it from canon without a second thought. I don't care how awesome your crop circles or stunt jumps or card stacking or tree climbing or staring contest skills are, especially when you only won the staring contest because this stupid bug car screwed Mater over. Who even voices these stupid little things anyway? I don't care how cool you think you are for winning a bunch of minute-to-win-it challenges. You don't have a leg to stand on when comparing yourself to Sir Tow Mater, you bucket of dish soap. Mater has every reason in the world to not feel jealous of his sister and to prove the case that he's better if he actually wants to engage in this immature nonsense, but he chooses to bring up exactly none of those reasons, and this all gets even worse when you stack it on top of the other instances of character damage we've had throughout this series, especially now that we know that this takes place after Cars 3, meaning that this entire storyline about how Mater wants to go faster than fast when he never has before doesn't make any sense at all when he still has the rockets. And he literally used them to beat McQueen in the Radiator Springs Grand Prix, blitzing past him as the credits roll. Nothing is safe anymore. Look, I know I said in my Incredibles 2 series that I was worried about the show, but that was more of a general concern I have with Pixar as a whole. Cars on the Road seemed so simplistic, I didn't honestly believe any major damage could be dealt. I was a little skeptical, yes, but not to any significant degree. I legitimately did not think it was possible to screw up the characters of McQueen and Mater on a cross-country trip. How do you do that? How do you fumble one of the easiest character dynamics? How do you so blatantly contradict this ending when you're already so far removed from the settings and stories of the main Cars movies? Was it because it would be more marketable to present McQueen with the classic red coat of paint everyone recognizes rather than his new blue look? Was that it? Well then here's a wild idea. Set the story between Cars 1 and 2. You didn't have to set it after Cars 3 and reverse everything. And the story doesn't even work in a vacuum. Cars on the Road is just as broken as its own self-contained story due to how every single adventure they get caught up in is somehow even more ridiculous than the last. And sometimes they don't even bother trying to write an adventure in favor of sending the audience on an acid trip instead. And it's also just as broken as its own thing due to how every character arc it tries to accomplish is either pulled out of nowhere at the last second, already done better in a different movie, or an absolute joke with no development whatsoever. But you know what makes this one sting extra hard? I feel like I'm on my own this time. People are loving this show. It's not a situation like Cars 2 where the whole world agrees it's a steaming pile of dog shit and one of the worst movies ever made. The Cars franchise as a whole is viewed as a joke. It's the punching bag. Everyone loves to jump on it as the crap franchise where it's all unfunny humor and abysmally slow pacing and ineffective emotional beats, and the fact that they made a million spin-offs about the dumb idiot tow truck and everyone hates him, yada yada yada, whatever, I don't care. Cars as a franchise deserves more respect. And maybe you think that's a dumb hill to die on, but that's fine. I know it's not a flawless series, I've never claimed it as such, and you're never ever gonna hear me defending these movies as cinematic masterpieces, but you know what? There is some really powerful stuff in those movies. Cars 2 is a disaster, but it still tried to do something meaningful with its characters, and Cars 1 and 3 have genuinely emotional scenes and substantive arcs and messages it wants to get across that meant something to me. It's not like Toy Story where it's a highly respected franchise that found a special place in the hearts of people all around the world across multiple generations. Cars is largely panned by critics, and people are so quick to dunk on it for merely existing, which makes me worried that nobody's even gonna give a shit about the lengths to which Cars on the Road has damaged the original movies, or will even remember that there was ever something to have been contradicted in the first place, but I did. I remembered what you did. Once again, we have a case of a sequel, retroactively strengthening my love for the originals through the process of ripping them to shreds. I'm so sick of Pixar trampling all over their classic movies. Just leave them alone. I know the money is tempting and you're in dire need of some financial stability, but that doesn't give you the green light to destroy everything you've built up previously. Sometimes you need to leave well enough alone. You've annihilated Toy Story, you've nullified Incredibles, and now you've dealt serious damage to Cars, and thanks to that, I have absolutely no faith in Inside Out 2. I already had basically none, but this show had the chance to restore a tiny little bit of my hope in the studio's ability to handle its previous originals. Not anymore. The Pixar I fell in love with as a kid is long gone, and we are never, ever getting them back. God damn it! Having said all that, I'm still praying Toy Story 5 breaks the mold and undoes Toy Story 4's damage, but I suppose only time will tell in that department. Well, that was shorter than usual, I guess. This was more of a one-off rant than what you're used to seeing from me, but I really didn't expect to end up actually making a video about the show. It kind of snuck up out of nowhere and then took me by surprise even further by erasing the ending of Cars 3 and tearing down McQueen, Mater, and Cruz. Great. And you know what? Even if it turns out I'm the only person in the world who cares enough about Cars to want to rant about this, that's fine by me. I love these characters, warts and all, and I wanted to rant about Cars on the Road. Of course, this was still more of a side project, as my main focus right now is making my second video on Lightyear, where I go way more in depth than I did back in June now that I can access the movie and go through scene by scene. So hopefully this little rant was enough to entertain you in the meantime, but I've got to get back to work if I have any hope of finishing this next video in a timely manner. But before I go, though, I do want to take a second to give a shout out to all of my co-commentators who I forced to watch this absolutely terrible show with me. If you enjoy listening to their reactions, then you might be interested in checking out our Lightyear commentary track.
What are you Once everyone
It's just everywhere.
I'm just dumbfounded.
As you can probably tell, visually it's a little rough around the edges as I was still figuring out how to get these types of videos through YouTube copyright, but I've gotten a much better grasp on that since then, and over the past half year we've also recorded plenty of other reactions to movies and TV shows from the exceptionally brilliant... You wanna hear more? Oh no.
No, that's not the thing anyone ever wants.
There we go.
And then Hootie fucking dies!
Then he got a new worst nightmare.
He has an eye patch now? Yeah, that's not the holy milk.
Oh my goodness!
You're inadequate.
To the agonizingly painful.
What is this? Cars on the road again? Are you kidding me? No! No,
This
not
wish is a creepy
No! Trucks. I want to die. Time to bring the thinking chair over in the plane.
What?
And
What?
It's the magical thinking chair.
And we've got a massive backlog of reactions already recorded that I still have to edit and upload, so if you like what you find there, then rest assured, there's plenty more where that came from. And beyond that, I also have all my other long-form videos available on the channel, from my Toy Story 4 and Incredibles 2 series to my best and worst movie and game rankings. You've heard me plug them all before, so rather than give a breakdown for each one, I'll just link you to the playlist containing all those videos and you can browse it at your leisure. There's plenty of videos on my channel to keep you occupied while I keep trucking along with my Lightyear critique. But for now, I've gotta... well, you know how the quote goes. Once again, I would like to thank you all for watching, and hope to see you all soon for whatever you decide to watch next. Goodbye!